In this video, we're going to be going over a lot in the way of Fallout 4 mods, specifically taking a look at some of the recent releases that really stood out. There's been a ton of great content coming to this game, even now several years after release, and even just over the past few weeks. A lot of these are top tier mods, some of them making the game a bit scarier in a Halloween vibe, and other ones that are really next level weapon mods, some stuff that is pretty unprecedented. So in this video, I'm going to talk about most of that and hopefully give you some incentive to get into or start playing Fallout 4 again. If you enjoyed the content, you can leave a like or subscribe. I'm actually going to have some other non-Fallout 4 mod videos coming, some stuff on Skyrim, but also Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3. But without further ado, let's take a look first at the H&K MP5 complex. And yes, this is actually different. If you pay attention to Fallout 4 modding or just watch my videos, there was actually a totally separate and also very high quality MP5 mod to come out a couple of weeks ago. We just happened to get two very well done MP5 mods in the span of just a few weeks. So this is going to be from the group of modders that brought us the RU556 and a variety of other weapons, and this mod is actually pretty incredible. Just right off the bat, one of the real standout features is the customization. There's two major variants of this one, the typical MP5, but also the MP5K, which is going to kind of be the stubby, smaller version that doesn't have much of a stock. While making these videos, I'll typically just have a couple of weapons showing you off some of the different customization options, usually 2-3, as that is more than enough. With this mod, I needed way more than that. You can change so much about this weapon mod. The typical stuff like stocks and scopes, but other things around the upper or lower receiver itself. Integrated suppressors, integrated flashlights, of course having the MP5K mini version or the regular size MP5 version. Even further, to actually go along with some of that, there are different sets of animations depending on which magazine you're using and some of the other configurable options. And taking it all together, everything is immensely high quality and just quite well done. With this mod, you could have a lot of different variants of the same MP5, and every single one will look great and function pretty well in game. And it's definitely the top tier of weapon mods. But of course, stuff like this is pretty subjective, so if you're like, hey, I have an MP5, I don't really like this one, or you want something different, we also do have the FN-FAL SA58. This mod has been a long time coming. We've seen several teases over the past few months, but now that it is finally here, this is a massive mod, even just by weapon mod standards. And of course, that'll start first with the weapon customization options. Similar to the MP5, you're going to have a lot in this department. You could really change the overall look and feel of this one. You could change some of the receivers, the stock, scopes, magazines. There have been some FAL mods in the past, but nothing comes close to this one as far as the customization goes, and actually one really nice detail that a lot of people like to ignore or just tend to ignore. This mod goes the extra step of actually having a lot of perk requirements with it. To get some of the top tier stuff or some of the unique attachments for this one, you're going to have specific perks outside of just the typical gun nut 4. It is one of those things that's kind of minor in the grand scheme of things, but it was a nice attention to detail. And similar to the past weapon, this also will have custom animations dependent on some of your customization options. So it won't be the same animation every single time, you could have some slightly different takes on it. But also to go along with some of those customization options, there are some pretty unique or interesting ones. You could turn this into a laser weapon, which I just love when mods do this, or alternatively, if you don't like laser weapons, a radiated variant is also there. These are just simple weapon mods locked behind certain perks, but there also are unique variants of this weapon scattered around the Commonwealth. There are several of these added into the game, some of them just meant to be silly, other ones just to be kind of interesting, but that's actually still not all. Even though this weapon and its implementation is pretty top tier, the animation, sounds, all of it comes together to be a pretty great package, it actually also comes with a secondary weapon, that with the Curry machete. The way this is implemented is it'll basically be some additional mods for the existing machete in Fallout 4, and this of course looks pretty cool. There are quite a few different customization options for this also, and with some of those options, this actually can become a pretty cool looking melee weapon, and for the overwhelming majority of mods, that's where it would stop, but no, there's actually more with this one, as even beyond all of that, it's going to add in a new dungeon into Fallout 4. This being known as the Bone Zone at the top of the map. Basically, at this dungeon, you're going to find a couple of things. A lot of notable names if you follow Fallout 4 modding. There are almost 50 different mod authors included in this dungeon, so there's actually quite a few. But even further, it's not just a shout out name-wise, there's actually a ton of other in-game items added in with this. After taking down a certain user, you'll be able to loot something off of them. The vast majority of this is just kind of silly or interesting headgear that you can find, but some of it actually is pretty practical. something that just looks cool in game. Plus, if nothing else, this is actually a scaling dungeon that is a great place to actually test out the new FAL if you just want to go clear through an area. And if you find some stuff you like on one of the enemies you take down, you can of course loot it and use it on your own character. So naturally, this is a massive mod, adding in a lot into this game. A new weapon, a new melee weapon, a new dungeon, a ton of new apparel items, and hey, considering it's free, at the very least, you should probably give it a try. But if for one reason or another that wasn't your cup of tea, alternatively, we do have the Excavator power armor. This is a mod I've talked about a couple times on the channel thus far. Basically, the Excavator power armor is from Fallout 76. It was one of the new power armors added with that game. A good chunk of people weren't a huge fan of Fallout 76, went back to Fallout 4, but missed that old power armor because it definitely looks pretty cool. Unfortunately, with Bethesda games, you can't port items from one game and bring them back into another, so to get the Excavator power armor in Fallout 4, you'd have to do it illegally or recreate the entire armor, and that's what we're seeing here. It does have one customization option on the chest, one of these being more true to form to Fallout 76, the other one being a custom one, and yeah, there's really not much else to say about it. It is the Excavator power armor. If you liked it in Fallout 76 or just want another power armor in this game, this is your outlet to do so. There are two sets placed in the Commonwealth in a pretty lore-friendly way, so you can stumble upon it and get it that way, but I think it's a pretty cool one, and in the future, we're actually getting future updates to this, adding in some of the custom skins that we could also see in Fallout 76. But then, something that is pretty special, we also do have the Machine and Her, specifically the Xbox release of this mod. I talked about the Machine and Her several times on this channel in the past, and put simply, this is a DLC-sized follower mod for Fallout 4. It's going to add in a very interesting story all centered around one particular character. The dialogue with this character is always super interesting. It actually does have a lot of depth to it, and it really draws you in story-wise. Plus, the voice acting is just in general really well done.
I guess I wanted to pretend that it never existed. It's Agnes. That's what they sent me here to find and bring back home.
But this will bring you to some different and new locations, but also add in some unique or different mechanics with this character. And speaking broadly, Fallout 4 really doesn't have a lot in the way of quest mods compared to some of these other mods, and this one is a cool one. You get a cool and interesting story, but also an awesome follower to go along with it. There's not much new to talk about with this mod, but what we did get is a release of it on Xbox One. Considering so many of the larger scale mods don't really come to Xbox One, this is actually a pretty big deal, and if you've never played this one on either PC or Xbox, it is definitely a good download. You don't have to create a new playthrough or anything like that, but download some of the mods in this video, download this mod, and you'll have a pretty good time. Although, outside of that, we also do have DC Vendor Shops Overhauled. You've probably spent a lot of time in Diamond City, seeing some of those same old shops time and time again, and what this mod will do is actually overhaul them to make them just a bit more immersive, I guess. It's not that they were particularly unimmersive before, but I think some of the changes are one, realistic, but also just novel. I think for a lot of us now, having played Fallout 4 for 4 years at this point, some of the stuff is just kind of old. So having a mod even that just changes the look of it slightly is pretty cool. It makes it feel different, it makes it feel unique, and I think the changes brought to the table with this mod are actually pretty well done. But of course, outside of that, looking at some more unique or different experience-based mods, I want to look at some of these scary mods that came out with this past Halloween. There's always a problem I have with Fallout 4 mods where a couple of cool stuff will come out on Halloween Day, making it kind of hard to actually cover those mods in time for Halloween, but now you're getting to see some of those now. The first of which is Kelly Macabre. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. So in a recent video on this channel, I talked about the Kelly Manor horror quest. This is actually somewhat of a sequel to that, involving the same main character, that with Madison. She is totally custom voice, and it is really well done. It kind of acts as the main narrator or the person you're following through this quest. Also, this sequence is just really cool,
I guess.
Okay, let's go. Stand still though. You're going to have so much fun. Whoops, this isn't where I meant for us to go. Then follow me, we're pretty close.
In effect, this is going to take you to a totally new in-game location with a horror theme, and to put it simply, it is a puzzle dungeon. There won't be quest markers holding your hand, you're going to have to think, look for clues, and try and figure your way through this. It's actually quite a bit of fun. For that reason, I don't want to spoil anything, because literally showing you really any amount of this would be a spoiler, but one of the other main appeals of this is if you complete this dungeon, outside of just the cool experience, you also get a pretty cool new weapon. This is going to be an AUG 3 based weapon, but obviously having a bunch of bones around it. It doesn't really have much in the way of modifications, but it just looks really cool and obviously very unique. It's quite a bit of fun to use in game, of course featuring custom animations, and just overall this is a really good package. A cool quest, a cool experience, but also a cool weapon to use after that. But then outside of that, we do have Whispering Hills. I actually just talked about this mod also not that long ago in a horror themed video, but Whispering Hills just recently got a pretty large scale update. Whispering Hills will do a couple of things. First and foremost, it'll kind of change the weather of Fallout 4. It's going to make the game a lot foggier pretty much at all times. There's several variants of this fog, so you'll see some differences, but the real effect is it's going to really limit visibility. You'll have a harder time seeing enemies, and that does make the game quite a bit scarier. But even further, the other side of this is a Silent Hill otherworld. So some of the time, as it transitions from day to night, you may be sucked into the otherworld. There's custom sound effects and sirens to go along with this, which really gets your blood pumping if you know what's coming next. In the past, this really just spawned in groups of ghouls that would attack you, but with the most recent update, a ton of custom NPCs were added, making this quite a bit more horrifying. So after being sucked into the other world, NPCs will spawn around you and attack you until the event ends. And I don't even want to tell you too much about these new enemies that spawn in, but they're terrifying. They'll run at you, they'll attack you, they're all Silent Hill inspired, and of course some of the sound effects coming along with them really does make this pretty scary. If you're looking for a horror experience or just something to spice up the nights in Fallout 4, this is a great mod for you. And also, fortunately, it's very customizable, so you can change how often this occurs, how tough it is. But if all of that alone wasn't enough, then we also do have the RepConn Hazardous environmental suit. What this is going to be is a very simple new armor for Fallout 4. It's one of those armors where what you see is what you get. If you like this aesthetic, then you'll like this mod. It is fully modular though, so you can make some changes with this or just use some parts and not the others. And just in general, I thought it was a cool looking one. It does provide you with radiation protection, so it can kind of act as a radiation suit in some way, and just overall, I think it actually fits quite well into the Fallout universe. It looks like something that would be worn by the Institute or some kind of Brotherhood drop pod soldier or something like that. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the Fallout 4 side of things. A lot of really cool and epic mods in this video, some scary mods to try and tackle, but also a ton of great weapon and armor mods. Those weapon mods in particular are truly next level. I feel like they're in a category of their own compared to some of the more typical releases. Obviously, we're approaching the end of the year. I'm going to do a top 10 mods of 2019 video, and it's actually going to be pretty difficult. I've been thinking about some of the recent releases as well as some of the older ones, and yeah, I'm going to have to spend a lot of time balancing out what I want to include in that one. But otherwise, with all of that being said, it's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. As always, again, I thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, but with that, I hope to see you all next time.